Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It is 5:07. Good Wednesday morning. It's O'Connor and Company. Chris Plant's back from his cruise. It was good to hear him on the air. All is right with the world. Trump's back in the States. The King of England is ticked off at us. We're doing something right, people. Oh, no, King Charles doesn't like our position on immigration. What's he going to do? Tax our tea? Oh, no. Stay in your place, big ears. Coming up later this morning at 6:35, we'll talk to Cal Thomas. At 7:05, Tom Fitton, he just uncovered some fascinating information about the governor of Minnesota, the man who Democrats wanted to be one heartbeat away from the presidency. And we'd all be eating Chinese food for breakfast. And then at 8:05, Steve Malloy. He was with the Trump's transition team there for the EPA. We'll talk to him about this absolutely groundbreaking, game-changing decision yesterday by the EPA. It'll be challenged in the courts. There's going to be a fight. But the EPA reversing decades of destruction on our industries by claiming that CO2, the thing you breathe out, is a pollutant. You may be all in on climate change. You may hate greenhouse gases. I get it. That's fine. But to determine the thing that we exhale is a pollutant was a huge overreach. I hated when the Bush administration did it back in the early 2000s, and I applaud this. I can't wait to talk to Steve Malloy about that. That's all coming up. I'm fired up. I'm Larry O'Connor. That's Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
That conversation we had with Mark Levin yesterday is still rubbed off on me. I've been in this kind of mood all day, all night, So I go to sleep last night. You saw this news that there was an earthquake in Russia, giant earthquake, and of course that triggers tsunami warnings. And it's anywhere off the coast of the Pacific has got to be on the lookout because this earthquake was right off the coast of the Pacific, right?
Yeah.
And so I saw those tsunami news, and I woke up this morning about an hour ago, and I have these text messages. So I have a wonderful mother-in-law in Oklahoma. And she sent a group text to all of my kids and my ex-wife who live in the West Coast. I have a kid in Washington State and other kids who are living off the coast of California. And they all live close to the coast. And they're like, oh, well, I'm praying for you. I hope you're okay. And, and I'm like, she's so sweet. But come on. I mean, that doesn't affect everyone living over there. But then I started to do a deep dive. First of all, serious tsunami warnings. I mean, the Trump administration was all in on these warnings, and they evacuated the coastal harbors and areas in Hawaii because this isn't, hey, guys, be on the lookout just in case there may be a tsunami. They're saying, no, a tsunami is coming. Go to high ground. Save yourself.
Yeah, no, it's an evacuation.
Yeah, it was major.
Yes.
And it's still in effect for Washington State, Oregon, parts of Northern California. So then I'm starting to dive in, and you're starting to research. It's like, oh, gosh, what's going on in Hawaii? Because they evacuated everybody. And you stumbled across this remarkable story involving Oprah Winfrey, who owns like half of Maui, right?
Yeah.
And what has happened here? Where apparently Oprah has a private road, part of the Hana area of Maui. She owns a private road, and only she has access to this road from the main highway close to the coast to higher ground. And the only other way, if you're on the coast, to get to higher ground is to take this really long, narrow, circuitous route to get out. And Oprah refused to open her private road to allow, all of the help to save their lives.
Yeah. So this is, let me put this in, that movie where there's some sort of disaster and there's a family in a minivan and another two are on a motorcycle, right? And they're going, and there's this traffic jam, and then they cut to emergency management begging the star who's in a limo in like Colorado, like very far away, right, from the disaster. And they're just like, and as you said, she's just like, Gail, I don't want to take the call, right? And so the villain movie star doesn't care, and the people on the ground are panicking, and then eventually the motorcycle goes up a mountain and they survive, but the family dies. Anyway, so we've all seen this play out, right? I love that the villain movie star, doing lines of coke in the back of the limousine, you got the whole thing, right? And it turns out to be the nicest woman in America.
It's the Queen of Nice,
the
Oprah
villain.
Winfrey. She's the villain in the back of the limo, although we're extrapolating on the coke, allegedly.
Right, we're kidding.
Yes.
Right?
She has a private road from Wailea to Kula, and it was shut down. Now, this is the route that would have been most convenient for the population of Wailea and the people who live on the coastal areas who were needing to evacuate to save their lives.
Yep.
To actually get to high ground. And eventually, now we're told according to the Maui Police Department, that she did open the road. And my understanding of private roads is that in an emergency, the government can come in and commandeer and take control, as is understandable and appropriate. But it took quite some time for that to happen, long enough for this story to have major legs and go everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you look at the map, I mean, it's a major population. You have three choices to get out. You can either stay on the coast, of course. They have a famous coastal highway there in Maui where you can drive all around the island. It's beautiful. But, of course, staying on the coast doesn't help you because the whole point is you're trying to get to high ground because a tsunami is coming.
Right.
The other way is this really circuitous route that basically takes you all around part of Oprah's giant compound. I mean, she has a monopoly on like a third of the real estate of the island. How did the state of Hawaii allow that to happen, by the way? To have one person purchase up all of this property? I mean, they have really stringent property ownership laws in Hawaii because they want to protect the natural beauty.
I'm sure when you have enough lawyers working on it,
you
can have what you want. 870 acres for something like $6.6 million, and a ranch bought in 2003 for $5.3 million.
Yeah.
She also owns 100 acres in another area. She owns a lot there.
And there's a roundabout road that's like, several. It looks like it's about 50 miles to get to the higher ground over by the Kula Forest Reserve and the Kula Botanical Garden, which is, public and tourist spots. But again, it's a trek to get there. Or if you used Oprah's private road, it'll take you about, 5 minutes to get there.
Yep.
Instead, she or whoever's running the property on her behalf or whoever feels terrified to make a humanitarian decision and feel the wrath of Oprah once she found out you made the decision, decided, better to let people die.
Yeah.
than to get Oprah on Oprah's bad side.
I mean, I will say, I have sympathy for, these mega stars. And, the paparazzi are brutal and it's a security issue. So I don't begrudge her owning a road and, hundreds of acreage in Hawaii.
No, private property rights are great. I love
absolutely. Them, but during an emergency like this where people have to and there are videos out there of people saying, open the dang road.
Right.
And begging her.
The police were there protecting the road.
Right.
Like they were driving. They're like, okay, we can get there. Just let us through. And the police were like, nope. Can't go through here. This is Oprah's road. And so they all took to social media overnight screaming about it and blaming Oprah. Again, eventually she or some of her representatives or maybe just Maui police commandeered the road. And
what a fun PR disaster she's waking up to.
But there is a meme out there showing her, on the set of her old talk show, and she's saying, you get to drown, and you get to drown, and you all get to drown. Not quite, I think, what Oprah was hoping for. It's fine, but it turns out everything seems to be fine. And in fact, the latest news is that Hawaii has now canceled their evacuation order. So there were tsunami waves that came into Hawaii. We're still going to assess whatever damage there may have been, but at the moment, it looks pretty okay. It's 5:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
It's good to be Oprah. I have no problem with her being rich, and she parlayed her success as a television talk show. Let's be clear. she completely ripped off the format created by Phil Donahue. I mean, Phil Donahue created a format, created a form of television.
That's right.
Oprah came in and basically copied it. Even in his city, he was in Chicago. She's in Chicago. She starts her version of the Phil Donahue show, but instead of an old white liberal, it's a large black female liberal. But other than that, same show. She stole the show and stole the format and parlayed it into an empire. And you know what? Good for her. God bless America.
Sure.
It's a beautiful thing. But when you take all that money and you buy half of the state of Hawaii, whenever disaster strikes, you know, you're going to be blamed for part of the problem. Remember, in the fires, the state of Hawaii, and specifically the island of Maui, seems to be, you know, not the most functional government. When the fires came, they had a lack of water and water access. The fire department was stymied. They were sitting there. They just had to see people's homes burn to a crisp, and they were unable to do anything about it because of the resources, and they just didn't plan properly for it. That was a big part of that fire. And, of course, Oprah was under fire for raising money, and then the money, just like in the California fires, the monies went to these NGOs that never, in many cases, made it to the actual people that they claimed they were raising money for. Remember that scandal?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. You have these horrible mismanagement of resources or funds. You think of LA, you think of Hawaii, Democrat run, and yet they will reelect the same people. Yeah. It rarely changes to the makeup of the leadership, and it's just bizarre.
It often happens in places of great beauty and known for its, lifestyle being kind of laid back. Everyone's like, hey, what are you going to do about it? Hey, look at the palm trees. It's nice.
Right.
And they don't get activated. And I get it. It's understandable. And here's the problem with Oprah. I'm sure that half of the things that she gets blamed for in Hawaii aren't her fault, and she has nothing to do with it. But when you're the rich titan that buys up everything and owns everything, you're going to get blamed. But this in particular seems to be justified, this thing. In fact, here's some of the videos of the people in this traffic jam as they're trying to drive out on a 2-lane highway to get out. And again, I want to remind everybody, it's to save their lives. This tsunami is coming. They knew it was coming. It did come, by the way. And as they're trying to adhere to the government evacuation demand that they get out of the area, these videos of the traffic jam are unbelievable. And they're all sitting there looking at the gate protecting Oprah's private road, and they're not allowed to drive through. And it's got to be maddening and terrifying, by the way. Imagine having kids in the backseat of the car.
Exactly. Yep.
So here's one of the videos somebody posted while they were sitting in this traffic.
Look at this. I think they're trying to open Oprah's road. Come on, Oprah. Save us. Road to all the way up country, bro. All the way up country. She got it all to herself. And everybody trying to get in. Cops trying to open it. Nope. Still closed. Man. She got her own road from Wailea all the way up country, which is the safe zone. And she won't even save us. Now, I don't know that, but road's still closed. People are still passing it. And we're still stuck.
By the way, this guy looks like the character Maui from the animated film Moana. He's of course topless because it's Hawaii, and that's what you do.
Meanwhile, I think it is important to say that Oprah is someone who has lectured, Americans on doing good and caring about those who are less fortunate, and so for her, and again, the reports are saying that now, I don't know if it was her. Maybe she has someone managing that road. Maybe she has someone managing her land. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't her giving the absolute no, don't open the road. But there should be sort of a standing policy that if there's a state of emergency and your road is needed to get people to higher ground, you open the road. It can still be blamed on Oprah. I don't know that it was her giving, but still, this is a very bad look.
Oh, buck stops with her. Absolutely, buck stops with her. It's her property, and that's what happens with it. And you're 100% right to point out that she is first in line to lecture the rest of us about how we should vote, how we should choose for the governance that she thinks is appropriate. Let's not forget her production company made millions, I think, from the Kamala Harris campaign for putting on a paid infomercial.
Yeah,
in the guise of an interview, where she acted like she was peppering her with questions when the whole thing was staged and produced, and she made
and I have no doubt that Oprah criticizes people who have a problem with illegal immigrants flooding into their communities, taking over things.
We're not about
how
walls.
How many illegals are living on her land? Seems like she has some extra land to give away, Larry.
It's 5:23.
You've probably seen the stories and the pictures coming out of Gaza that kids are starving. Well, it turns out it's a lie. And now the New York Times is admitting they lied. We'll talk about it. Keep it here. It's 5:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
And it's now 5:37 as our Wednesday morning charges ahead here on the 30th day of July. I'm still stunned that by week's end we'll be in August of 2025. Things are zooming. At 6:35, we'll try to stop time with Cal Thomas. At 7:05, Tom Fitton on some news Judicial Watch has uncovered, as only Judicial Watch can. And then at 8:05, Steve Malloy, formerly of the Trump EPA team, about this new move by Lee Zeldin, EPA administrator, to not determine that carbon dioxide is a pollutant. It's a big deal. It's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Julie.
Good morning.
If you owned half of a state, would you open your private road up to people who were fleeing for their lives?
Certainly in a state of emergency, I would.
See, that's what makes you different than Oprah Winfrey. That's it. And always,
I don't know. You need to ask that question. Is in Del Rey, would you open your...
Yeah, exactly. To those neighbors.
Hold on. Let me think.
I am always asked, what's the difference between Julie Gunlock and Oprah Winfrey? And sometimes I'm stumped.
Come on.
So, I don't know if you've noticed, but over the last several days, there has been a renewed narrative in the liberal media about the starving children of Gaza. And that we have to do something. We have to fix this. Israel has to stand down. We have to resolve this because of the starving children of Gaza. And, of course, my response is, nobody likes starving children. It's horrible. And I've seen some of the images. My first response is, who is starving these children? Because there is a lack of moral clarity in a lot of this reporting. Yes, children are starving. We all agree with that, and it's horrible. But the implication is that it's Israel's fault, and it's not. It's not. It never has been. And this is what, after October 7th, this was one of the major narratives, that when Israel was going after the people who perpetrated the October 7th attacks and trying to eliminate Hamas, the terrorist organization, which, by the way, can end all the conflict immediately by releasing the hostages and surrendering. It's really all it takes. It's not that hard. And remember, Joe Biden said, we're going to set up a pier so that food aid can get right to the, and of course, that was a disaster. It wasted millions, I think over $1 billion, actually.
And 2 Americans died.
And Americans died and were severely injured. And it was the perfect example of Biden's futility, lack of leadership, his weakness, and the challenge of this, because the idea was, well, the only way we can get aid there is if we bypass Israel and do it via sea. And Israel's like, we're letting aid through. What the hell are you talking about? And the aid is sitting there rotting away in a warehouse because the Hamas terrorists want children to starve. They want those images out there because it politically helps them. Fast forward to a New York Times story on these children that are starving in Gaza. And boy, when I saw this story and I saw how quickly people ran with this story, because there was an image of a child, and it was devastating. It looked horrible. I mean, you're a monster if you don't weep for this child, okay? And it looked terrible, and the picture, as is usual, speaks 1,000 words in the media. And I was immediately reminded of a story the New York Times published in February of 2020 talking about the horrific conditions in an Italian hospital where the COVID-19 virus had taken over and there were no respirators. And people were dying in the hallways of that. And that New York Times article instigated the immediate reaction from the Trump administration and Fauci and all this stuff. It's like, all right, we can't let Italy happen to us. This thing's coming. We've got to prepare. And that's what set the stage for what ended up in the pandemic lockdown. And it turns out that New York Times story lacked a whole lot of context about who had COVID, who was really getting it, who was really dying, and about all the Chinese people who were going to Italy to work on, I believe it was in a fashion warehouse where they were making, high couture fashion, and Italy was importing Chinese labor. So it was, again, coming from China, and that was a lot of that was left out of the story. All right, so let's go back to this story from the New York Times, because, again, you get one well-placed, well-framed article in the New York Times, and suddenly the earth begins to move because the New York Times said you must move. That's what happens here. And so that article went crazy about this starving Gaza kid. And a lot of people at the time were pointing out, hold on, this doesn't look right. And by the way, this kid has a feeding tube and is under a hospital's care. You can see there's a little line coming out of the kid, and so now that leads us to yesterday's correction. The New York Times has put out a correction. And they put the correction out on the New York Times public relations account on social media, not on the New York Times account. So the New York Times account has like 5 million followers. And when you put an article out there, everybody sees it and it goes viral and everybody. No. This correction went out on the New York Times public relations account that has about 50,000 followers. And listen to the correction. Children in Gaza are malnourished and starving, as New York Times reporters and others have documented. We recently ran a story about Gaza's most vulnerable civilians, including Mohammed Zakaria al-Matwak, who is about 18 months old and suffers from severe malnutrition. We have since learned new information, including from the hospital that treated him and his medical records, and have updated our story to add context about his pre-existing health problems. This additional detail gives readers a greater understanding of the situation. So in other words, the photograph that the New York Times photographer took on the ground there and then published worldwide was not of a child who was starving and looked horrible because of a result of a lack of food aid due to the war. This was a sick child in a hospital who was sick well before October 7th and before the war between Israel and Gaza.
Yeah. And Larry,
but the headline is Gazans are dying of starvation, and the whole feature was this 18-month-old baby.
So let's just say, for sake of argument, that the reporter wasn't told this, right? And this still bad reporting, terrible editorial standards here, okay? But let's say they didn't. Well, it turns out actually there were other photos. One of the other photos is the brother of this starving child, who the New York Times cropped the photo so that child didn't appear in the photo. That child, perfectly healthy, totally normal weight, chubby even.
Normal? Well, yeah, the kid looks like Augustus Goop from Willy Wonka. He's going to get stuck in the chocolate pipe.
They crop that out to take away any doubt and think, why is one child starving and one child is perfectly normal? So they crop that out, and they just look at this admittedly very thin woman holding a starving baby. So again, like this idea of, well, maybe the reporter wasn't told everything and they had to come back to it. No, the reporter knew. The reporter knew.
The woman is thin, but not as thin as her child.
Right.
When I first saw this article, I was like, okay, this is a mom who is eating fine.
Yep.
And the child, why is only the child starving in this picture?
That's right.
Why is only the child's skin and bones? I mean, she's holding the baby so that you can see the vertebrae and ribs popping out of the child's back. It's purposeful.
It is.
It was done purposefully. There's more on this story that we want to share with you coming up. But this is the New York Times lying to its readers to drive a narrative to try to move governments in the direction that they demand they move.
Yep.
That's what this is. And it's using journalism as a weapon, and it's not journalism, it's propaganda. 545.
Breaking news and the inside story on 105.9 WMAL. Making sense of the news.
So lots of good commentary here, by the way, about what the New York Times did. Lots of reactions to this pathetic so-called correction. They don't even call it a correction, by the way, or retraction. They just call it an editor's note. You know, we've added further context. They've added the truth to the story.
Yeah.
The truth. And by the way, I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's just because we're in the middle of a war here, which people seem to be forgetting. And when you're reporting behind enemy lines and the enemy is a terrorist state and you're working for a Western media organization like the New York Times, and they allow you into a home behind enemy lines and the people who are allowing you in to tell the story are terrorists, maybe you should be skeptical. And maybe you should try to protect yourself from being used for propaganda because that's what terrorists do. How many times do we see stats that are just repeated in headlines and the source is the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is Hamas?
Yes.
And they just put numbers out there and they're always retracted.
Yeah, it is. It has been very hard to watch over the last couple of days, this story roll out and Israel again getting the blame. And nobody talks about the fact that Hamas is stealing this food, taking this food, preventing this food from getting to the people. I mean, again, we have said it over and over again. The solution to this problem is with Hamas. Release the hostages, give up, negotiate a deal, done. It's very simple.
And it's not like you know the two countries who have given the most in aid, financial aid and actual very real aid to the people of Gaza?
Probably
Do you know
Israel.
The two top countries are the United States and Israel.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have given more to the people of Gaza, and somehow the food doesn't get there. Take a listen. Here's President Trump actually acknowledging this issue and speaking to it. He's been pretty strong on it. Again, He's a human being. He hates seeing these images. He knows that children are suffering right now, but he seems to be pretty clear about who's at the root of it. Take a listen.
$60 million 2 weeks ago for food for Gaza. And nobody acknowledged it. Nobody talks about it. And it makes you feel a little bad when you do that and, you have other countries not giving anything. None of the European countries, by the way, gave. I mean, nobody gave but us. And nobody said, gee, thank you very much. And it would be nice to have at least a thank you. And I took a lot of heat. When I do that, a lot of people aren't happy about that because they say, well, why are we doing it and nobody else? But I think we had a humanitarian reason for doing it.
Also, he was asked on Air Force One as he was returning from Europe yesterday specifically about this issue and about whether it pays to give put more pressure on Israel.
Is there any use at all in pressuring Israel now to come to some sort of longer-term solution?
Well, you could make the case that you're rewarding people, that, you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp.
I don't know if you heard that because of the roar of the jet engines, but he was asked, should you put more pressure on Israel to come up with a long-term solution? In other words, give them their own state. And Trump seems very clear-eyed about this. He says, if you do that, you'll be rewarding Hamas. If at the end of the day here, after this war, there is a so-called Palestinian independent state that France has now decided they're going to recognize, and now the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has threatened to recognize this fall, then then the October 7th attack is a success.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
but also just the basis of that question, the idea that Israel needs to be pressured to do everything. They have constantly come to the negotiating table in good faith. They have constantly given things up. They are always willing to negotiate. They are always willing to talk. Just the question itself makes me want to break something.
As well, don't break anything. And this is radio equipment. It's very sensitive. We don't want to do that. Don't break anything. But you're right. You're right. That the entire, in fact, Trump also later said, hey, there's a ceasefire and deal on the table right now. Guess who rejected it?
Right.
Hamas rejected it.
Right.
There's more on this story today, actually, and we'll get to it later. As I mentioned, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom now talking about recognizing a Palestinian state. And the Pod Save America boys, the Obama bros, they're all in for the Hamas lobby. We'll tell you about that. It's 5:53.